Today we will be talking about compound interest. Okay, so what compound interest means is that if you are given a principal amount of a certain amount, you calculate the interest at the end of the period, and then you add that amount to the principal amount, the interest to the principal amount to get a total. And then for the second period, you calculate interest on the total amount. So let's clarify that with an example. Suppose you're given $10,000 at 10% interest. Okay, so at the end of first year, interest is equal to $1,000 into 10%, which is $100. So the total amount at the end of first year, total amount is equal to $1,000, which is your original amount, plus the $100 in interest, which is $1,100. Okay, so that's the new amount. So what you do is, like, this is the amount that you use to calculate interest in the second period. If you remember, in simple interest, we always calculated interest on the principal amount, but in compound interest, what we are doing is we're compounding the interest. We are basically calculating the interest at the end of the period. We're adding it to the amount, then recalculating the interest on the new amount. So we'll be calculating interest on $100 in the second period instead of the $1,000. So at the end of the first year, you have $1,100. So if you're going to calculate the interest for the second year, so end of second year, interest will be equal to $1,100, 10% of $1,100. So you're going to calculate interest on the $1,100 and not the 1,000. So which is equal to 110. So total amount at the end of second year will be equal to 1100 plus the 110, which is $1,210. Okay, so at the end of the second year, you have $1,210. So now if you want to recalculate the interest for the third year, you will calculate the interest on this amount. Okay, so let's try to do this example for over a course of 5 years. Okay, you're given year, this is your year, this is amount, starting amount, and then interest, and then end amount. Okay, so you are starting with the year one. So you're starting with $1,000 in the first year, and the interest is $1,000 into 10%, which is $100. So the end amount is 1,000 plus 100, which is $1,100. Okay, so now that you'll use to calculate the interest for the second year. So the starting amount will be $1,100, and so interest will be 1,100 into 10%, which is 110. So total amount will be, end amount will be $1,100 plus 110, which is $1,210. Okay, now third year. So you start with 1,210 as the amount, and you calculate interest on 1,210 into 10%, which is 121. So total will be 1,210 plus 121, which is 1,210 plus 121 is $1,331. So at the end of the third year, you'll have $1,331. Now, if you're calculating interest for the fourth year, the starting amount will be 1,331, and the interest will be 1,331 into 10%, which is 133.10. Okay, the interest will be 133.10. So your total amount will be 1331 plus 133.10, which is equal to 1464.10. Okay, so that will be the amount at the end of the fourth year. Now if you're calculating the amount for the fifth year, the beginning amount will be 1464.10 and the interest will be 1464.10 into 10%, which is 146.41. So your total amount will be 1464.10 plus 146.41, which is 1610.51. So at the end of 5 years, you will have 1610.51 or $1,610.51. So that is the amount that you'll have at the end of 5 years. Now as you can see, this becomes too cumbersome in order to calculate the compound interest. So we can try to derive what formula is to calculate compound interest. So that way it can be much easier to calculate that. So let's try to find the formula for compound interest. Again, let's take the example of $1,000. So you're given initial amount $1,000. So your initial amount $1,000. So with 10% interest, is equal to final amount. Okay, so that's $1,000 into 10%. This is equal to we can write initial amount as 1,000 into 1. So if you take 10%, we can write $1,000 into 1 plus $1,000 into 10 by 100, which is equal to $1,000 into 1 plus 10 by 100 is 0.10, so 1,000 into 0.10. So if you take out 1,000 common, which is 1 plus 0.10. Okay, this is the final amount, which is equal to $1,100. Okay, we know that $1,000 into 10%, we had actually calculated that here, which is $1,100. Okay, so that's the amount that we have here, $1,100. Now if you're calculating interest on this, so let's say we calculate interest on that. So that's initial amount is $1,100 plus 10% of 1,100 into 10%, we can write it as 0.1. So if you write 1,000 into 1, so we can write 1,100 common. So 1 plus 0.1. Now 1,100 is also 10,000 into 1 plus 0.1. So instead of 1,100, we'll write 1,000 to 1 plus 0.10 into this 1.10, 1 plus. Okay, so that's equal to $1,210, because if you remember, for the second year, the final amount was $1,210. Okay, now if you recalculate the interest for the third year, so $1,210 plus 1,210 into 0.1. 0.1 is the 10% interest. So if you take 1,200 common, 1,210 common, we can write. Now 1,210 is 1,000 into 1 plus 0.10 into 1 plus 0.10. So we can write this as 1,000, 1 plus 0.10 into 1 plus 0.10 into 1 plus 0.10. Okay, so as you can see, 1,200 and the third year's interest is equal to the same as 1,000 into 1 plus 0.10 raised to 3, where 3 we have 3 years, 1, 2nd, and 3rd. So this 3 represents the 3 years that we calculated the interest for. In general, if you have n years or t years, so suppose if you have t years, we can write based on the general trend that we are seeing here, we can write for t years in final amount is equal to $1,000. $1,000 was the initial amount. Into 1 plus r. R is a rate of interest raised to t years. Okay. So this 1.10 is a rate of interest, and 3 was the number of years that he calculated the interest for. In this case, it was 3 years. So in general, the final amount is equal to initial amount into 1 plus r raised to t. 1 plus r raised to t, where t is the number of years that you want to calculate the interest for. So t is number of years for which interest is needed. R is the rate of interest. And then the initial amount is the amount that for which you want to calculate the interest for, and you can get the final amount by this formula. So we can write FV, which is the final amount, is equal to initial amount, or we can call it as principal value, plus 1 plus r raised to t. So this is the formula that you can use to derive the compound interest. Okay, thank you.